Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. It is taking a concerted push by Native advocates in Alaska to prompt that state's law enforcement officials for more transparency when addressing the problem of missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. After significant pushback, state officials recently added to their list of unsolved murder cases. We'll learn why that is important. We'll also talk about what is lost when officials remove public access to information designed to help fight the pervasive problem that affects Native people at a higher rate than other groups. That's coming up after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. For several Southwest Alaska communities, it took one night of hurricane-force winds and floods to destroy what could take years to rebuild. How and where to begin is a question that a group of men from Kipnuk tackled at a construction workshop in Anchorage. They've been staying in the city since their village was evacuated after the October storm. But as KMBA's Rhonda McBride found out, this time, instead of disaster, it was an opportunity that came knocking.
The whack of a hammer, the buzz of the saw. Those are the sounds of hope.
3 3/8 larger and 3 3/8 smaller.
They just lost their homes. They lost everything.
Tiffany Caudill is the training coordinator for Alaska Works Partnership, which offered a one-week program on how to frame a house.
I do think that this is really helping them stay positive and stay hopeful. They've all been so grateful for this training.
And they're all volunteers, like Devin Mann.
This is the door, and this one's going to be the window.
Devin looks sharp in a brand new hoodie given to him after a military cargo plane airlifted him and almost his entire community to Anchorage. He came with only the clothing he had on and feelings of trauma after a 5-mile ride in a floating house.
I thought something bad was going to happen to the house, like break apart. I thought that would be it for us, but I almost gave up. But I had hope. It
is hope that keeps Devin going.
Everything we're learning in here and doing, it's going to be useful in the future for our village.
I mean, honestly, I can't stress it enough. Use your wrists.
William Andrew is impressed with his crew of trainees.
For what they went through, I'll be honest with you, their attitudes are awesome. They're wanting to learn. They've been great.
Andrew says 1 week of training in basic construction skills is not enough to learn how to rebuild a village, but it's a start.
I'm excited about their future, and I'm hoping that they get to rebuild it.
For now, there are hopes the training will lead to jobs and other opportunities. In Anchorage, I'm Rhonda McBride.
5 Native people are among 29 Bush Fellows to receive awards to develop leadership skills. In the fourth of 5 profiles, Brian Bull of Buffalo's Fire reports on a tribal judge who wants to indigenize the bench.
Since childhood, Megan Troyer has been fascinated by the judicial system and concerned with making sure Native people receive fair and equitable treatment under the law. The daughter of a White Earth Ojibwe tribal judge and an Austrian Holocaust survivor, Troyer serves as chief judge for the Boys Fort Band of Ojibwe. She has very specific goals for her Bush Fellowship.
I'm going to cut my judicial caseload in half and take Ojibwe courses for the 2 years of the fellowship. And I'm really going to make focusing on the language my top priority and try to learn as much as I possibly can. And then part of my fellowship will be going around to Indigenous scholars, spiritual leaders, and mentors that have worked in the area of.
Ultimately, Troyer says she wants to bring humanity to the judicial system. Her late mother, Margaret Troyer, was the second Native American attorney in Minnesota and was appointed as a federal magistrate in 1982, making the elder Troyer the first female Native judge in the country. For National Native News, I'm Brian Bull.
And I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
The Indian Arts and Crafts Board promotes Indian artists of federally recognized tribes through its online source directory. Information on this no-charge opportunity available at doi.gov/IACB, who support this program.
Support by Drummond Woodsum, a full-service law firm whose nationally recognized tribal nations practice provides services to tribal nations and their enterprises and to companies that do business with tribes across the country. More at dwmlaw.com.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. When it passed the Not Invisible Act, a bipartisan Congress entrusted a panel of mostly Native experts to create a report and recommendations to help fight the pervasive problem of missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. That report came out 2 years ago, but you won't find it on the webpage for the Department of Justice. Trump administration officials removed it in the purge of resources and information they determined to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. The report is available elsewhere, but its absence from the DOJ site is an indication from federal officials they have no intention of following through on their role in helping to address the problem. We'll hear about that this hour. We'll also find out about the significance of dozens of names being added to the list of unsolved murders in the state of Alaska. You can join our conversation today. Call us at 1-800-996-2848. That number again, 1-800-996-2848, or just 1-800-99-NATIVE. Joining us now from Anchorage, Alaska is Charlene Okpik-Apok. She is the Executive Director of Data for Indigenous Justice. She is Inupiaq. She's been on the show before. Charlene, good morning and welcome back.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Joining us from Durant, Oklahoma is Carissa Newkirk. She is the president and founder of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, CHETA. She is Caddo. Carissa, hello and welcome to Native America Calling.
All right. Hello. Wonderful to be here.
It's wonderful to have you both on the show. And Charlene, I want to begin with you. Alaska State Troopers are the law enforcement who investigate major crimes in the state, and they recently added more names to a 2019 list of unsolved murders. What's the story behind that, and is this a positive development in your view?
Absolutely. For me, this is really about the community coming together. This is advocates in Alaska who have been working on this literally there were some people have been working on this for a long time, but more recently, in 2018, we started really trying to get FOIA requests and have this information be transparent. And that's an ongoing effort, as we saw more recently in October, to get these names out there and publicly available for people.
Charlene, what explanation is there for leaving these names off the list?
I don't have an explanation. I won't provide the reasons for the state troopers, but at least from our point of view as advocates for MMIP, it's essential that we have the information available and we know what cases there are in order to be worked on. I would assume that the state troopers also need the same information to allocate their resources and to decide which cases to work on and how to prioritize their own resources. So that is what we see when we want transparency in government and what we're advocating for. And once that information is established, once we see it and we have it, that's when the real work begins, right? So all this work to just get the information publicly available and make sure we're working off the same information is just the beginning.
And what all information is included on the list, and perhaps what also is lacking from this list?
Yeah, so a while back we saw that these cases, first of all, were not listed at all, like other states have unresolved cases publicly available so that people can give tips and, maybe they know information that comes up sometimes decades later. Without that information being public at all, the first push was to make it transparent, and then those were released, but with a limited amount of cases. And we, as a community, we know our people that are missing. We know what happened in our own lifetimes and our family histories. And so we said, hey, there are definitely some names missing. What happened to the rest? And so then more names were released, and then it was like, okay, well, we still see that there's some discrepancies about our truths that we know in our community to what we're seeing again online. And so we continued to push, and more names have been released. I believe there's 115 now. And so, there's still some that we have questions about. Sometimes that is a data issue around categorization and how they classify the cases, but we're keeping a close eye on all of those and making sure we're advocating for the families' cases to be on that list. That should be.
Okay. And Charlene, as I understand it, some of these cases, they go back decades, 50, even 60 years. What kind of challenges does that create with regard to making sure this list is timely and accurate?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I heard from the troopers was maybe where they have unresolved cases in their statute of limitations, they wouldn't consider putting a case like that on the list or publicly available. But for us as families who are mourning and grieve those losses and still hold hope and carry hope for these cases, you can't just erase something that happened, and that it is important to have those ones on there that even if they're from the 60s, right, that those are still real losses in our community and that we haven't given up hope. We know that there's scientific things happening with DNA. We know that people come forward with information after a long amount of time, and there should be that opportunity to have those cases revisited in those situations where it's possible. So we think those are just as valid, and just as important to have on there, even if from law enforcement's perspective they aren't.
Sure. Now, it's been 5 years since you launched the Data for Indigenous Justice. Have state and federal law enforcement data collection for MMIP cases improved during that time?
It has. I am proud to say there's a lot of work to be done. Let me start with that. There's still a lot more to do, but I am proud to share the successes of Alaska Native people up here coming together and working together. We passed the SB 151 in 2024. We have mandated data entry into the federal NamUs database now. Of course, we do data trainings. We do trainings on how to enter into the federal database and how to request certain reports, do FOIA requests. So there's been a lot of successes. There's also been a redefining of a missing persons field with the state troopers data collection as well, and that's important to, again, better reflect what's happening here in these cases and with our families. And so there's been a lot of successes, a lot around data, and there's a lot more to do.
What would it take to have better transparency overall with these cases?
I think that, there are a lot of efforts for transparency that's being led by advocates and families and people in the community. But I think the umbrella conversation is around data sovereignty, right? That more tribes can exercise their sovereignty around data and be enacting reciprocal relationships and practices around data that can be applied to this issue and so many other topics. But the umbrella thing is really about data sovereignty and exercising that for tribes. So that's really where I see, we're doing this in one lens of an issue that is a high priority for us as Indigenous people, but it is a part of a larger effort around data sovereignty.
Charlene, I think one of the reasons this issue is so difficult and so many people in our communities struggle with it is because even when the numbers improve, even just one case is too many, right? It's just something that's just so shocking. But you've been in this a while now, and what difference do you feel that you and other advocates have been able to make for MMIP cases during that time?
Yeah, I think one of the things, is really difficult, and I'm sure my comrade here on the call too can attest to that. But one of the things I think we do really differently is we really lead with the family voices and their perspectives, and we're really just trying to get behind the survivor families. And one of the projects that we've done is called How They Lived, because so many of these conversations, unfortunately, have to be about how they died or these unresolved things, right? These really difficult things, as you mentioned. And we really wanted to shift that narrative to how they lived. And so we have a project that also defines how we talk about data, that it's humanizing. We're humanizing the information, and we're sharing the stories of our loved ones and how they lived and how they want their legacy to be remembered, right? And so I think the reason I bring that up is that helps the longevity of how we do this. It's also being led in an Indigenous way that honors them and their lives. And I think that makes a really big difference for how we're able to continue this work.
As we mentioned in the introduction, the Department of Justice has removed the Not One More report from its website, saying it's driven by a push for DEI. Now, the report is widely available elsewhere. Charlene, what's the significance of the DOJ's decision?
Yeah, this is unfortunate because the report was fantastic. That commission, the Not Invisible Act Commission, did an excellent job. They did an excellent job listening and compiling the information. So I just want to say that. And it's unfortunate because, it has really good information and it's still available. We can share that with you all who are listening in. And it's not new, right? Even the beginning of the census, right, as a practice in the United States, the census was meant to erase us as Indigenous peoples. And today, our data systems are often structured after a census modeling that continues to try to erase us, So while it's frustrating, it is not new. And we know as Indigenous peoples that we will continue this work no matter what. We cannot be erased. We won't stop doing what we're doing because it needs to be done. And that's the way that we are as Native peoples. We take care of our people. We advocate no matter what, So it's unfortunate, and we know what to do. We know to keep going, and it isn't new. So we have all the teachings from our history in order to move forward. And if people want the Not Invisible Act report, I have it.
Okay, Charlene Okpik Apuk kicking off our conversation here today on Native America Calling. Stay with us. We'll be right back. A new film tells a story of pre-contact survival in Alaska. The dialogue in Two Old Women is entirely in the Gwich'in language. It's an adaptation of a novel by beloved Gwich'in writer Velma Wallace. We'll hear from the talented people involved in the film coming up on the next Native America Calling.
Every family caregiver could use help finding the necessary resources to care for their loved one. The AARP Family Caregiver Resource Guide helps family caregivers access key programs, services, and agencies in their communities. A copy of the guide is available by calling 877-333-5885 or online at aarp.org/caregiverresources. AARP supports this show.
Thanks for tuning in to Native America Calling. Today we're talking about government transparency in light of the ongoing problem of missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. Advocates are speaking out about two recent instances in which law enforcement officials are not using information that could make a difference. You can join our conversation today too. Just call us. Phone lines are open, 1-800-996-2848. That's 1-800-99-NATIVE. Our next guest, Carissa Newkirk, joins us from Durant, Oklahoma. Carissa Newkirk. She's the president and founder of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, CHETA. Carissa, I want to talk more about this report that was removed from DOJ's website. You and other Oklahoma MIP advocates have criticized this action by the administration. What are the implications in your view?
So it wasn't just, the report. Even the best practices for media coverage was archived. The commission's recommendations was archived. all of those things truly just make you look in a different lens that puts our relationship with the United States government back years. There was already trust issues there, and to remove it from the DOJ website after a promise, which, the government and our nation's promises have always been a tricky subject. But I feel like, with President Biden's administration, starting from 2021 when he created the bill, to have the federal government help us so that our people were seen and heard, that relationship started to heal. And so with Trump's administration coming in, it's definitely setting us back.
Carissa, can you remind us more of the history and the need initially for the Not One More report, and how is the DOJ involved?
So in 2021, President Biden had signed an executive order. I think it was 14053. He was directing multiple federal agencies to work with our tribes to improve public safety, to strengthen the responses to missing and murdered Indigenous people. And so the Department of Justice launched a federal steering committee, updated policies, and it was more for victim support, prevention efforts across Indian country. They even created the TAP program, which is Tribal Access Program to federal to FBI databases. And so all of these promises and all of these acts showed us that we were seen, that this issue was a travesty in Indian country. It was something that needed to change, that just our people shouldn't have to worry about, that our federal government should help us with. And so when all of this started, I know multiple people. I have a friend that was on the Invisible Act Commission. She got to go all over to different reservations. And so all of our MMIP advocates were reporting our numbers of cases back to her so she could send it back to the White House. And that really gave us hope. And when it was removed, even though it is accessible on other places, for the federal government to remove it is very disheartening.
Okay, and like you just mentioned, this one individual who was actually going out into communities and, doing business on behalf, apparently, of the report. Are there other types of resources? Are there other types of efforts that you're concerned about will not be provided through the federal government because the report has now been removed?
So I do think that, it is so hard for our people to get media coverage. I can't tell you how many times I have stood alongside a family and begged for coverage for their loved one that's been missing or their loved one that was murdered. And when they removed the best practices for media coverage, even that took away, from us. Now, I'm not saying it always works, but it was something that if you know absolutely nothing about how to get your loved one coverage, you at least had something to go by. And so removing that to me was a slap in the face for our families. Our families have went through so much, and for them to feel like they were heard for a second and then they go backwards is just unfathomable to me. I do not feel like it will restrict us in our way of moving forward. I do believe what Charlene said. We have always protected our people, and we always will. It's who we are as Indigenous people. We have been doing it for centuries. We have worked together, and as long as we keep in that mindset of helping our relatives, I do believe that we can put, if not a stop to it, we can definitely put a decrease in our numbers. I know a lot of us are doing preventative measures ourselves. I do human trafficking training, domestic violence awareness, suicide prevention, all of that, all through Oklahoma and Texas. And I know a lot of our relatives throughout the United States are doing the same. We're looking at the bigger picture regardless of what's going on. with the United States government.
Well, we heard from Charlene earlier in Alaska about the lack of information on MMIP cases there. And it sounds like in Oklahoma you have similar challenges, but also there have been efforts to improve collection and case data and the training and the outreach you do. Sounds like it's making a difference.
We hope so. We truly try to be partners with our law enforcement, tribal and state. And so we try to host, so my nonprofit hosts at least 1 to 2 free trainings a year for our officers, so that we can get them familiar with putting it into the NamUs database as well. Because it's great if it's just in our state, but we really need it in that national database as well. So we do different trainings so that we can show appreciation to our officers and create a good relationship, so that hopefully when we have cases and things like that, they know us from a different angle, and they care as much as we care.
I'm curious to know, what's the reaction or what kind of feedback do you get from law enforcement in your trainings? Because I think a lot of times as Native people, that's kind of our initial reaction, is to blame law enforcement. Oh, they're insensitive. Oh, they're racist perhaps, or they're just out of touch with our communities. But what do you hear from them?
So sometimes it is that, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes they're wonderful people. And so when my team first started with the training, so we don't do the trainings. We actually get people from all around the United States. We pay for them to come and do this training for them. And so they love it. They're thankful for it. We always feed them. They like that. And we also do a law enforcement banquet every year, too. We show our appreciation all year round, and we provide these tools to help them meet their goals. So, when you're an officer, you have to have a certain amount of, CLEAT certification hours or whatever certification you have every year. And so we usually try to do it, anywhere from June to September, because it has to be met by December. So we know their needs, they know our needs, and we just try to create a partnership. So we have not had any negative, we've had negative interactions with law enforcement, but I won't say we've ever had one in our trainings or anything that we're trying to build relationship. I saw that there was something broke, and we were, lots of MIPs were blaming our officers. There's a lot of negative interaction. And the only way that I could see to fix that was to put some positive interaction in there. Sometimes we have to be that person that even if we feel a certain way, we have to lead with our hearts and lead the way that our ancestors would want us to lead. And so that's what we started doing, and it has made a significant difference.
Now, we're also seeing some traction from lawmakers. For example, Nevada U.S. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, and there in Oklahoma, State Representative Ronald Stewart. They have publicly, both of them, have spoken out against this DOJ decision to remove the report. Do you have any optimism that department officials might change their mind at some point in the future?
I hope so. I can't say, for sure, but I do hope so. We do have, in Oklahoma especially, we have a very controversial government outlook, I'm going to say. So some of, our governor is not too fond of Natives and says a lot of negative things, but we do have some people that are representatives in our state house that are wonderful, like the ones that have spoken out. So I always try to lead with positivity, so I hope so and I pray so, but either way, we're still going to be doing what we do regardless.
Carissa, what led you to this kind of work?
I personally, my mother was severely beaten, and law enforcement didn't do anything to help her. And then when I grew up, I was also in a pretty bad abusive relationship, and I felt like no one was advocating for me. And I wanted, after lots of counseling and healing, I wanted to heal other people. I wanted them to feel seen. I wanted our Native people to be safe our women and our men. And so we also do suicide prevention. You know, we go into the schools and talk to them. It's a lot bigger than just our missing and murdered. It's trying to prevent that. And so, and then years later, my niece went missing. And so our flyers helped find her before law enforcement did. And so I saw that, and I saw that, like I said, I saw that broken piece, and I truly wanted to fix it. And I found a wonderful group of ladies that are on my board that wanted to fix it with me. And we've done a lot of great things, and I'm thankful for them because we could have never gone and helped as many people as we have if it weren't for their hearts. So it's a lot of things led me to where I am.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for sharing, Carissa. And you mentioned earlier that it's just really difficult to get media coverage for Native MMIP cases. And I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but I need to ask you why. What do you think is driving that?
Honestly, that breaks my heart. That is one of the pieces of this work that I just can't shake. They're always, I feel like sometimes our reporters are always looking for a story, and they're not looking at the individual person. Just like some of our law enforcement, sometimes they think it's more of a runaway case, and they're not putting priority on it. Or their lifestyle wasn't, squeaky clean. None of that matters. What matters is that they're a person and that they were missing. I've had so many stories where we have begged for people to have media coverage on young boys that were missing, and they did not respond back to us until they had been found murdered. And then everybody was contacting us, wanting to do an interview, wanting to do a story. And I stand with my family. So if that breaks their heart and they don't want to do it after that, we don't do it. And I don't blame them. So I can't tell you what it is. I think that somebody's always just chasing the bigger story. That's the only thing I've ever seen.
Well, listening to you describe it and just, the people, these are real people. These are people who are loved. These are people who have families who love them. And it really jibes with what we heard earlier from Charlene in these efforts to celebrate people, how they lived, right? Not how they went missing, but how they lived.
I loved that. I was like, oh, I have to incorporate that down here.
Charlene, back to you. I mean, what are your thoughts in terms of just the difficulties with getting media coverage?
Yeah, that has also been something that's been a top priority is engaging media. We worked with Illuminative to help build a media guide. It's called In This Moment, to also just like reframe the ways that we're asked questions and about what, again, like it's not chasing the next story, but really trying to share from our perspective. And so that has been useful to have and like give back to media to review before we say yes to interviews and then reshape what kind of questions they're asking. And so we're doing a little bit of training on also how what those conversations look like. And I think it's been getting better. And there's, like she's saying, there's still opportunities to get more coverage on some of these cases that, might not be seen as important because we are Native people or because there's victim blaming happening, but trying to train media on how to engage with us on this topic in a good way.
Mm-hmm. What about law enforcement, Charlene? Do you provide any outreach or training such as what we heard Carissa describe?
Yeah, so part of SB 151 mandates cultural training for the state troopers that is renewed. So it's not just a one and done check and then you're done for your career. So it's something that has to be renewed, and we really push for that curriculum to be developed with Alaska Native people having input in helping design that. And so that's being launched right now and implemented here for the cultural training. That's not going to fix everything. It also doesn't necessarily apply to the municipalities and the police departments. So there's still more work there, but it's a good start. It's a good beginning to see how that rolls out and see how we can tweak and update that. So that was a part of the bill that passed in 2024 here in Alaska.
All right, thank you, Charlene. And Chris, I want to go back to you. We're going to have to take a break in about another minute, but I'm just curious, with the holidays approaching right now, and does this work become increasingly difficult during the holiday season, or are there any challenges or maybe even spikes in MMIP cases around the holiday season?
Uh, Actually, yes. So usually from October, like end of October to February is our busy time. Sometimes in the summer we hit another peak, but usually August and September are usually very slow. We only had 2 murders in September, and so a lot of that leads back to domestic violence and people being at home more. Some of it leads to substance abuses. People use more during the holiday season because they might have generational trauma. There's lots of different factors in all of it, honestly.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Carissa. We're going to take another break. We're going to come back and we're going to introduce a third guest on our show, Cheryl Horn, who will join us from Fort Belknap, Montana. She is also an MMIP advocate, and we do have the phone lines open for listeners who would like to join the conversation talking about MMIP, missing and murdered Indigenous people today. Give us a call. We'd like to hear from you, hear from our listeners, hear what's going on in your community. 1-800-996-2848.
Skugtash. For more than 40 years, Ramona Farms has revived ancient traditional foods, tepary beans, pinoli, polentas, and more, all from store.ramonafarms.com. Ramona Farms supports this show. Domye.
Kaufman & Associates is a Native-owned and led consulting firm supporting Native communities with culturally grounded solutions to shape Indigenous futures. More at kaufmaninc.com, KAUFFMANINC.com.
We're glad you're listening today to Native America Calling. We're hearing concerns from MMIW advocates about a lack of progress by law enforcement officials to recognize what's behind the disproportionate number of missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. Please, you can join our discussion today by calling us at 1-800-996-2848. That's 1-800-99-NATIVE. Joining us now from Fort Belknap, Montana is Cheryl Horn. She is a Fort Belknap MMIP advocate. She is Nakota and Aani. Cheryl, good morning and welcome to Native America Calling.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. Now, you have been an advocate for 7 years, since 2018. How have you seen Montana state lawmakers and also law enforcement officials improve issues like data collection and funding for tracking MMIP cases like we're talking about today?
Oh, I've seen in Montana specifically, 2018, I was standing on a rim rock, the rims in Billings with my first missing niece, and Googled MMIP. All that came up was a couple pictures of ribbon skirts, and fast forward to now, we have our task force. Well, we had the task force starting back then, but even in 2020, when my second niece went missing, it wasn't effective. It was just the beginning stages. It didn't have any. We still don't really have on-the-ground resources, but we've built the Montana Missing Persons Database with the task force, and, we have our task force, which has law enforcement on, the Attorney General's office, IHS, different representatives, all that have a seat at the table that play a part in the missing, the searches and all that in Montana. So as far as Montana, I do see us getting better with the legislation on the state level. I think it's more on our tribal levels that we have to, kind of step up and support and find more resources for them. Because we have, with the task force, one of my, we found my second niece, Selena, in 2020, the thing was we didn't have a search and rescue team, So one of my things was dreams was to get everybody trained who wanted to be trained, and this is our second year. We've provided that training for anybody who wants to join. We do it for our 8 reservations, and then we open it up to the public. I've personally attended one and seen the collaboration and the team building there. So I just feel like the restrictions are still on the local levels,
Mm-hmm. Cheryl, you mentioned search and rescue training. Sounds like that's been really successful. What are some other on-the-ground resources that are needed there in Montana?
Well, on the ground, we need a response, first response. We need funding, If we have a missing person, right now what we're dealing with in Montana is the treatment fraud that's coming into play. And me as an advocate, I have zero funding. I'm just all volunteer. I have nothing. Even if I'm the tribal representative, I don't have a budget. I don't have anything to help anybody at the end of the day. So I guess started in 2018, beg borrowing, and I'm still beg borrowing to go after people and get them home, send families to go find them, So as far as resources, we're still not there yet. We had a couple nonprofits that did us good, and then those just kind of played out. We still have in Montana, we still have the Snowbird Fund, and that's very, very effective and I utilized it to help the girl that was sent home from treatment. We got a 19-year-old from the reservation shipped to Billings, Montana, and dropped off at 8 o'clock at night. Took us like 3 or 4 days to find her, and she was in jail, So there she is from that little incident. Now she has a record. Now she's probably going to get a warrant because I don't see her getting back to Billings, So there's still so many gaps and many, many resources needed for all our people, not only in Montana, because this isn't a border thing. They don't say, oh, there's a Montana border, I personally try to help everybody from every state, anybody. You don't even have to be Indigenous to be on my list. My list goes all the way over to Virginia, all over. It's just like if you open your mind and this is what you're going to do, and this was a promise I made when my niece was missing, Selena. I made a promise back then, looking into an empty field, that when we got her back, I would do my best to help everybody that asked. And I'll tell you what, it would be a full-time job if somebody had the money and the resources to pay, but it's something we have to do outside of our 8-to-5 job.
Cheryl, how large is your caseload? How many missing or murdered relatives do you have on your radar right now that you're trying to assist or assist their families?
Let's see. As far as Fort Belknap, we're very, very lucky. So we're small, and we have a good response to when a person goes missing. And we have currently 0 missing people. So which allows me to go to everybody else around the state, because I'll tell you what, in 2020, when I found my niece after New Year's, Selena Bell, Selena Not Afraid Bell, she, my phone, even while I was there searching, we helped get a trafficked girl home. 2 different incidents happened while we were searching at the rest area to help trafficked women. So it started immediately. Immediately when I opened up my social media to my niece's case, and I updated in the morning and I updated at night, I have not had a day that didn't include MMIP. Whether it's a call, going to a meeting, it's this. I have been a daily thing for me since I made this promise, and like the other lady said, I don't see myself quitting, because how do you quit on people? I couldn't quit on my sister. I couldn't leave her in that rest area, and I had to stop everything in my life to be there until we got my niece back. And that promise I made has kept me going. There's times you need to take a little break as an advocate, but it's you get refreshed and you go start again, because you feel if you stop, sometimes it will stop. That's just what comes with the advocating for others.
All right. Thank you, Cheryl. We're going to go to the phones now where we have Jen, who is listening to the show online in East Texas. She's a regular caller. Hello, Jen.
Thank you, Sean, so much for taking my call. I have a question that just entered my thought, or I would have posted it earlier, in regard to defunding the Missing and Murdered program. This missing and murdered people, indigenous especially, but women, is an international and global problem. It's not a cultural problem that would fall under DEI or whatever for our president. But my question I'm curious about is, in his first presidency, he had set up a program, but I'm wondering, I don't know that he had secured that it would have funding at that time. And I know that Biden did fund one, but how can he, because I'd seen earlier he had unfunded a program he had priorly funded. So did that one ever actually get funding? First of all, is my question. And we have to understand that our missing and murdered indigenous people here in the States is heartbreaking, but this is happening in Spain and Mexico and Peru. It's a huge problem our president should be addressing. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. I think, Jen, in checking with our producers, you might be talking about the Trump initiative, Operation Lady Justice. Could be. Cheryl, are you familiar with that program and its current status?
Yes, I was familiar with Operation Lady Justice because that is the program that helped find my niece Selena. So when she went missing in 2020, it's Operation Lady Justice. It went missing in 2020. We wouldn't leave the rest area. We basically demanded an investigation. We demand to find her, this kind of thing. Well, the Department of Justice, Operation Lady Justice showed up on day 8 and talked to us, and they told us that they were doing her. It would take about a week. It would be her profile. So the team was there to profile the whole case, follow the family. We were everything, to see what really was going on. So so we didn't have the search right then. So on day 13, they came to us and said, okay, the searches team will be here now. That was the CARDS team, the child abduction team, that fell under Operation Lady Justice. So they showed up on day 13, and it took like 5-6 days to when they found her after doing a grid search in the area where we already had been camped and searched. So they did. That is the only case that I know of that fell under Operation Lady Justice. I could be wrong because as much as I advocate, I have never heard another case say Operation Lady Justice helped. And after that, honestly, it just went silent and then it was gone. It turned into another name. I don't remember what the next administration named it. But, that in Selena's case, Operation Lady Justice did come in and do the work. But that's the only one I've ever heard of myself personally.
All right. Cheryl, thank you. Carissa Newkirk, how about you? Any experience with Operation Lady Justice?
That is the only case that I know of as well. And none of my cases in Oklahoma, and I cover all of Oklahoma and North Texas.
All right. Thank you, Carissa. Cheryl, back to you. You've mentioned earlier, just how busy you are and so many cases, even outside of the state of Montana, but they're specifically in Montana. What are the current trends? Are cases going up or down?
Well, the current trend is, like I mentioned earlier, it's with the treatment, that they're going missing. We've had some deaths from the treatment programs, the sober living homes aren't safe, they're not monitored. I'm not talking for all of them, but, as with everything, there's those that are out just to make money off the people. They're recruiters. Specifically in my tribe, I want to tell you that I've had to speak up, go to the tribal council and speak up, because we had two men from I can't think of the name right off the bat, some kind of health thing that they set up in Arizona, right? This new program. Well, they come to my tribe and propose to the tribal council to asking them to prepay 10 slots. So the total price would have been $600,000. They wanted my tribe to prepay for those slots to send our people to this treatment center, and so what I did is I reached out to my friends, my connections down in Arizona who are boots on the ground, Reva Stewart. So I reached out to her and got the history on these people and got the lists of the bad companies, the bad, the ones from Arizona that were not in compliance and were not true. So this was one of them, And what they did was they had one of our people go there and come back and testify all this amazing things. But at the same time, she's still using to this day, So here I am speaking up and against this because I don't think that that's right, And the funny thing is my tribe sent representatives down to meet with them, and they were so good to us. They fed us and all this. And I said, I bet they did. I bet they romanced you. So what happened from then is they found out I was the thorn in their side. So they started trying to romance me and offer me money to help be the go-between person between my tribe and them. And thank God it was just stopped, Thank God somebody believed me in the tribal chambers, and stopped it. But that's how we're getting now is the MMIP is starting to be finding our people, getting them home, trying to get them out of Arizona before the summer hits. And, that kind of is what we're running into with MMIP. And the runaways are up higher, and we're dealing with that on the state level in our meetings. Is the word runaway automatically gets you out of, the cops' line of vision or anything to do with being found. Because with my niece Selena, we literally had to, for about 4 days, fight them that she was not a runaway, because we know our children, we know what's going on. So removing that word runaway is, something that we would like to see in the future. Just, I don't know what name we will come up with, but it just hinders the search for our children. And like everybody said, it's winter time up here. We're below zero already. So I'm already telling everybody I see, you don't need to go to town. You don't need to walk down the street. You need to stay home. We lose somebody every year. And just trying to encourage our people to remember it's winter, and the safest place for everybody is home right now.
Cheryl, thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate your time as well as our two other guests. And to review, we had 3 people on the show today: Cheryl Horn, Carissa Newkirk, and Charlene Okpik APOC. All of them MMIP advocates, and we surely appreciate all of the hard work they and others in their line of work do, and them taking the time to educate our listeners today. We'll be back tomorrow to hear about a new film adaptation of a beloved work by a Gwich'in writer. Hope you'll tune in. Until then, I'm your host, Sean Spruce. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Support by the American Indian College Fund. The American Indian College Fund provides millions of dollars of scholarships to thousands of Native students every year. Tribal citizens of every age and experience are eligible. The deadline for applications is May 31st, and you can find everything you need to apply at collegefund.org. That's collegefund.org, or by phone at 800-766-FUND. Education is the answer.
The Association on American Indian Affairs invites all to Tribal Museums Day, December 6th through December 12th. Tribal museums may offer no-cost or reduced admission, art markets, and live cultural demonstrations. Tribal Museums Day honors diverse Native nations as the experts of their own cultures. You can find a map of tribal museums and more at indian-affairs.org/Tribal Museums Day. The association supports this show.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.